welcome back to the David67 Celtic News YouTube channel. This early Sunday afternoon video is going to be a post-match review. We look back at Celtic's rather dramatic last-minute winning against St Mirren yesterday evening, live on Sky Sports. I have to say I don't particularly enjoy 8 o'clock kickoffs on a Saturday evening. Watching games on television, and I suspect it was even more inconvenient and difficult as a travelling fan, be it for St Mirren or for Celtic. And hopefully this is a one-off experiment that Sky don't keep on imposing on Scottish football fans for the rest of the season. However, getting back to the game, obviously very, very dramatic ending with a goal 5 minutes into added time. In the video, we're going to have a wee look at the stats, the few incidents in the game, my own player ratings, my rating for Martin O'Neill, and one or two wee thoughts as we go through. So Celtic, slightly surprisingly, for me at least, started with Rio Hatate in midfield. For me, that means Celtic do have rather too much of a similarity between Engels, Hatate and even McGregor. And Celtic, I think, could have done with someone with a different sort of way of playing football, such as Negrin or even possibly Luke McCowan, who of course did come on at half-time. However, to me, it didn't look like there was anybody on the pitch other than Czuniecki who was really going to be able to open up the St Mirren defence. And it also felt as if Celtic were going to be kind of struggling to beat the all-out defensive press and midfield press, and the front players of St Mirren trying to slow down and stifle any quick ball out of defence. And to be fair to St Mirren, they did a very good job of doing all those things. First half was, for me, very, very disappointing all around. Celtic had, in essence, two chances. Good shot by Czuniecki that skimmed the bar in the 14th minute, and then an awful shot by Johnny Kenny in the 31st minute, completely getting his feet all tangled up when the ball went miles wide. In between, St Mirren had some good chances. A ball that flashed across the box that was just deflected slightly, but missed the far post. Left foot shot from the edge of the box in the 28th minute from McManaman that clipped the post and went wide. And then 43rd minute, a bit of a goal-mouth scramble. Kasper Schmeichel went down rather early, but happily the St Mirren centre forward blasted the ball miles over the bar. Half-time, Martin O'Neill did make one change, slightly surprisingly, taking off Johnny Kenny to put on Luke McCowan. Wasn't the least bit fussed about taking off Johnny Kenny. He had a terrible half, mostly because no one was passing to him, and he really isn't terribly good at the moment at holding up the ball to bring in the wide players or the midfielders. Although I was a bit surprised to see Luke McCowan come on. I would be much happier had we brought on a true wide player like Yang or even Barlaquisha, and maybe used McCowan or in midfield in replacement for Hatate or Engels. However, O'Neill went with McCowan, who did bring a bit of liveliness, but no real final ball, no real passes or shots, etc. in his second half. Second half kind of grumbled on, no major incidents until in the 70th minute. One of the St Mirren players very clearly offside at a free kick. He then was in the way of Liam Scales, who was trying to make a clearance. Scales' clearance skewed into the goal as an own goal. However, quite correctly, the assistant referee flagged it for offside, and the VAR agreed, and the goal was disallowed quite rightly. And the massive amount of football experts and pundits seem to agree with that decision, apart from Stephen Robinson. The second half grumbled on, neither team really making much in the way of proper chances. Kasper Schmeichel did make a couple of pretty easy saves. Celtic huffed and puffed and tried their hardest, but really didn't seem to have that little piece of magic or creativity to break down the excellent St Mirren defensive structure. O'Neill made a few substitutions, none of which really made much of a difference. And the basic tactics and formations of both teams grumbled on and grumbled on. I, however, did actually have lots and lots of faith that Celtic were going to score sooner or later. I wasn't quite expecting it to be 5 minutes into added time, and also wasn't really expecting it to take Celtic the best part of 2 minutes into second half added time to actually get any form of shot on target, with a free kick from Nygren that was headed on by Yang, but was a very looping header that was never going to cause any difficulty. However, to give him credit, Yang made some good progress down his left-hand side, crossed into the box. Ball was poorly cleared by St Mirren. Colby Donovan showed very good ability to trap the ball and pass off to McGregor, who took a lovely touch to get past the St Mirren midfielder rushing out the box, and then hit a brilliant left-footed shot top corner, giving the St Mirren goalkeeper no chance at all. Given the fact that the referee had said there would be 5 minutes of added time, not quite sure why he added on another 2 minutes of added time. However, he did, but Celtic held on, and St Mirren really had made no threat in that last couple of minutes of extra added time that Kevin Clancy found out of nowhere. In the end, Celtic win 1-0, 3 points, and moves us to within 4 points of Hearts. Hearts are playing later on today away at Aberdeen, and it'd be great if Aberdeen could do us a wee favour and take a point or 3 off of them, and keep the gap under 2 wins. Celtic then obviously would still have a game in hand over Hearts, and then the big game on the 7th of December, where if things all went to plan, Celtic could potentially take over at the top if 1 or 2 other results went Celtic's way. Looking at the stats for yesterday's game, possession was massively in Celtic's favour, 73-27. Shots were 16-13 in Celtic's favour, both teams 2 shots on target. St Mirren 5 off targets, 4 off targets for Celtic. Celtic got the ball, touches in the box 28-22. Saves were 2 for Kasper Schmeichel and 1 for the St Mirren goalkeeper, and corners 4-2. So it does look like Celtic were more on top, but not really making much of a threat on the St Mirren goal. And an awful lot of those Celtic shots were off target or blocked out by the defenders. Looking at the passing stats, Celtic had tons and tons of passes. However, not as many as we need to be forward passes were forward passes. 685 passes, of which only 189 were forward passes. So that's under a third of the passes. Massive 374 lateral sideways passes, so well over half, and 122 backward passes. Pretty decent for forward, for final third passes, 117. Crosses pretty decent again at 18. Not as good as one would want for either of those two, but at least a lot better than it was against Midtjylland, but nowhere near as good as it had been against Falkirk and Kilmarnock in previous Scottish Premiership games. Moving on to the ratings for the players and managers, I've given Martin O'Neill a 6 out of 10. I thought probably was his worst game managing Celtic domestically out of the 4 games so far. Wasn't massively convinced that playing both Hatate and Engels in midfield in this sort of game was going to work. I think midfielder with a lot more dynamism or attacking ability such as Nygren, or possibly even McCowan, or using a player even such as Balaquisha, who has played attacking midfield often in the past. Just felt as if Celtic were rather samey in midfield. Ralston and Tierney in the first half really didn't get forward at all. Celtic got kind of choked off and couldn't get the ball out of defence and midfield at all well. And I think the way that O'Neill had things set up didn't terribly work well. Certainly second half, Celtic much more aggressive, much more attacking, much more width provided particularly by Tierney, later on Scales, who swapped to left back. And it was noticeable that it was our right back, Colby Donovan, who 5 minutes into added time was right on the edge of the St Mirren box, setting up Callum McGregor for the winner. Substitutions, not really convinced that any of the substitutions worked. The only one maybe was the Colby Donovan one in the 85th minute, in that he helped set up the goal and did make Celtic look that bit more attacking, coming out from deep on the right-hand side. A bit confusing, I thought, with McCowan going to play out wide, taking off both fullbacks, putting on a centre-back and another midfielder, and then swapping a midfielder to right back and then taking him off to put on another right back a wee bit later on. All seemed a bit jumbled up and a bit panicky. I would much rather have seen a forward attacking player being thrown on, such as Yamada or Balikwisha or Yang. I think Yang was probably the only substitute that made some positive contributions apart from Donovan setting up the goal. So 6 out of 10 from Martin O'Neill. Now, in terms of the player ratings, for me, quite a lot of players who had average or slightly above average games, quite a few had poor games. Nobody really stepped above to a higher level. And so for that reason, a lot of the ratings are around about 6 and below. However, moving on, Kasper Schmeichel gave 6.5, made a couple of pretty easy saves. His distribution was, for the most part, quite quick and out of defence. The way that St Mirren were setting up, he didn't have a tremendous amount to do. What he did do, he did fine. So 6.5 for him. 5 for Anthony Ralston. I thought he was rather poor both defensively and trying to get forward into midfield and attack. He looked a wee bit lost at times and did look like the weak link in Celtic's back four. So dropping him down to a 5. 6.5 for both Austin Trusty and Liam Scales. Apart from the fact that Liam Scales a few times got out-muscled and gave away fouls to the big, tall, powerful St Mirren centre forwards. I thought he did a fine job. I thought he actually looked pretty good up and down the left wing, moving into attack when he swapped to left back for the last 20-30 minutes or so. Austin Trusty looked calm and assured in defence, rarely looked like he was ever in any trouble, and made some nice tackles, interceptions and clearances. However, his passing wasn't quite the way it usually is, mostly because St Mirren were clogging things up so much in midfield and in defence, which made it very hard to get the ball out, especially as so few teammates were coming for a pass or making themselves open to receive a pass. Kieran Tierney I've given a 6 to. Defended fine, didn't really make any mistakes, seemed to lack a bit of energy, did in the second half get himself forward a few times, a couple of crosses and passes, etc. Wasn't quite vintage Kieran Tierney, and there were a couple of times also in that second half when he did have a chance to shoot for goal, but kind of backed out for yet another pass, which killed off the movement. Callum McGregor I've given 7 and man of the match to. He was on a 6 right through to the 5th minute of added time when he scored that stupendous goal, and that bumped him up from 6 to 7 and gave him the man of the match award in my view. He'd played okay beforehand, some nice passes, some nice setups, some nice winning the ball back. I just felt that he probably should have had better ideas along with his teammates and the manager as to how to break down St Mirren's tactics, which were very much the tactics you'd expect them to have. 5.5 for Rio Hatati, 5 for Engels, both very disappointing for me. No real passes. Engels' delivery from corners and free kicks was poor. He wasted a very, very good direct free kick Celtic had late in the game. Neither seemed to have very much energy, neither had much creativity, and neither had any real ideas how to break down the St Mirren midfield pressure and blockages. Sebastian Chinecki, 6 out of 10. He sort of showed some nice flashes up and down his wing, particularly in the first half. Seemed, as he has done in every game, to tire after about 60 minutes or so. And disappointingly, apart from that one shot on goal early in the match, he really didn't threaten the goal either in terms of passes, crosses to set up chances for others, or making attempts himself to score, and also really wasn't getting himself into the box to support Kenny, Maeda, etc. as an extra attacker. So just 6 for him. Daizen Maeda I've given a 5 to. Very disappointing. He showed, for the most part, no real energy, no real get up and goal. And it was kind of a throwback to many of the games earlier in the season. He made one or two nice runs in behind the St Mirren defence, but seemed to lack either that bit of pace or that bit of confidence to fully go through with the movement. And for the most part, he got beaten out and blocked out by Gogic, the tall, strong St Mirren central defender. And 4 for Johnny Kenny, partly his fault in that his ability to control the ball when it's put up to him to bring in other players was rather poor. Very often his layoff pass was poor, or his first touch was poor. He had one shot on goal that missed by absolutely miles, and he looked a bit lost, that he wasn't really able to make any progress as an attacker. In terms of the subs, I've given 5 for McCowan and Negrin. McCowan showed a bit of pace and intent up and down the right wing, but no real final product, no shots, no passes, no crosses, no real breaking into the box. Negrin, one nice delivery, but otherwise nothing very much at all in his time on the pitch. Yang, I've given a 6-2. Donovan a 6-2. And Murray, I've given a 6-2. And Yang, pretty much a typical Yang performance. Lots of nice runs up and down the left wing. A lot of passes and crosses that failed to get their target. A lot of crosses over hit or under hit. He did have a header on goal a minute or so into added time. That was Celtic's first shot on target in the whole game. And indirectly he helped us get that winning goal with a cross that went too far but was recycled by Donovan to McGregor to score. So you may well disagree with a lot of these ratings. That's entirely reasonable. These are just my own personal opinions. So if you do have other ratings, other players you thought were deserved man of the match other than Callum McGregor, do pop those into the comment section. To summarise the game, very few positive things to take out of it, other than the fact that in the end Celtic came through to win the game. 3 points, cutting the gap to Hearts, keeping Celtic's momentum in domestic football very much going. Other positives I think, it's very, very clearly that Maloney, Fotheringham, O'Neill have created a real team unity, a real team spirit and bonding, and that's very evident from the way the players played right through to the last second. Very clear from the way that the players celebrated together along with the fans after the final whistle, and very clear from the way that Callum McGregor and other players talk in interviews and press conferences, etc. Very, very clear that the players are happy, they're motivated, they're together, they're unified, and that all comes down to Fotheringham, McManus, Strachan, O'Neill, etc. And both McGregor and O'Neill in their post-match press conferences and interviews were very much stressing the fact that team unity, club unity, all these things are very important. And I would echo those sorts of thoughts as well. So that finishes off the video. Still no real progress, it would appear, in terms of a new head coach and coaching team coming in. Martin O'Neill, a wee bit vague and mysterious in some of his comments post-match, almost implying that something is very, very imminent, i.e. is going to get announced on Monday. Maybe that's the case. However, that doesn't seem to be the way that the various different journalists and sports sites and Celtic sites seem to be covering things, but you never know. It may well be that behind the scenes there's been lots and lots of negotiations and that something is soon to be announced on Monday or Tuesday. My personal feeling is it's probably going to drag on for the whole week. I wouldn't be too surprised at all if O'Neill, Maloney and Fotheringham's last game as caretaker managers is the final game on Thursday evening. But we'll see how all that passes out. So, in finishing, just a wee polite suggestion, encouragement for those not subscribed to the channel. Please do keep those subscriber numbers going up and up and up. Completely free, no charge. And it does make things so much better for the channel the more subscribers there are. And do feel free to pop your own thoughts regarding the game, the performances, into the comment section, keeping things pleasant, polite, respectful, etc. And so until the next video, goodbye and hail, hail.